Paris wakes to a gray morning, and the river moves like iron under cloud. In a narrow cell of damp stone, a woman sits very still. Drips count the time against the wall. Her hair, once powdered and perfumed for rooms of mirrors and light, has paled into frost. A key scrapes. Leather creaks. Boots pause. She stands because there is no choice. The air tastes of lime and old straw. Outside, a roll of drums swallows prayer. She was once a queen, and now she is only the widow. It is a word built from absence, a title with the face torn off. She steps forward and the corridor bends toward the day. She was not born for corners and locks. In 1770, she rode into France as a teenage archduchess, a living treaty wrapped in silk. The road shimmered with promise. Versailles taught her how power looks when it smiles. Doors opened at the tilt of a fan. Names rose and fell on the breath of courtiers. She learned to build a smaller world inside a great one. Music softened the edges. Gardens folded around her like a painted screen. Her role was to shine. It worked until the shine itself became proof of guilt. Debt tightened. War ate coin and men. Taxes refused to do as they were told. Pamphlets hatched in the dark, small animals with teeth. They gave her new names, and the names multiplied like frost on glass. Madame Deficit walked the streets as rumor before the woman left her carriage. The libelles were an industry. They sold scandal in cheap paper coats. Some lied with art. Some lied with clumsy hands and still found buyers. They described her as a foreign mouth that never closed. They called her a courtesan, a conspirator, a glutton for diamonds, the ruin of farmers she would never meet. Many of these stories were gossip turned to coin. Many historians see them as myth, sharpened by rage and envy. What cannot be denied is the result. The city learned to hate a face more easily than a system. The court, with all its antique grace, became a mirror that showed the wrong story back to the people outside. The year 1789 burst like a storm door. On July 14, a prison fell and a symbol with it. The crowd learned new grammar. Deputies argued as if the world could be rebuilt by hand. Bread remained scarce. The royal family moved to the Tuileries, under watch and suspicion. She wrote letters to a brother. She tried to be both queen and human being and failed at both very often. In June 1791, a carriage left for the border under night. The faces behind the curtains wished for safety and woke to lanterns in Varennes. The return to Paris was a lesson in humiliation, written in stone faces and shouted names. The crowd grew used to the idea that a throne could be questioned. It grew used to the flavor of victory. Autumn 1792 broke the crown. The king was tried. He died in January, and the year marched on without him. She received a new title by law, Widow Capet, a cold label in a hot time. The temple held her in a square of hours. Guards catalogued the shape of her days. The separation from her children cut where no record can reach without bleeding. Whispers spread that her son was forced to sign a lie. Scholars disagree on the darkest details and warn against certainty. What cannot be disputed is the tearing apart of a family under the pressure of a nation that demanded a symbol. Symbols are fragile in life and heavy in death. She understood that lesson too late. The conciergerie swallowed her name in September. Its passages smelled of stone that never dries. The tribunal sat nearby. It had been built for speed. It measured loyalty with a ruler made of fear. On October 14, 1793, she walked into a room already crowded with conclusions. The air inside was thin. The charges came one upon another like waves. Treason, correspondence with enemies, the draining of the realm through reckless expense. Then the accusation that froze even hostile mouths, the corruption of her own child. She lifted her head. She answered as a mother who had learned to speak like a queen. Nature itself refuses to answer such a charge against a mother. Women in the crowd stirred at that line. Some believed her. Belief did not matter. Witnesses took their marks, some eager, some coached, some only loud. The law in that season did not love evidence as much as it loved energy. The verdict entered the room before she did and waited at the bench. She stood inside her own legend and could not move. 2 days was enough. The sentence was death. It turned her into the last chore of a busy morning. Yet the city felt the pull of theater. This would be public. It must be seen to be believed. That was the point. The revolution taught itself through spectacle, and the lesson had to be bright enough to burn. Day came lean and wet. October 16. She rose from a narrow bed and stepped into ritual. Hair cut close so the blade would not drag. Hands bound behind so the pose would be tidy when the crowd looked up. Many sources repeat that her hair had whitened in captivity. It is a story that returns because it fits the mood. Several historians treat it as legend, a poetic truth rather than a certain fact. What cannot be denied is the knife against the braid, the locks falling to the floor, the rough laughter of men who had learned to protect themselves with hardness. She did not cry then. She saved what she had for the steps. There was no carriage with curtains. She was lifted onto a rough cart. The wood scratched and complained. Soldiers walked on either side with pikes as tall as the past. Drums rolled. Windows filled. Rain marked the faces. The route from the prison to the square crossed a city that wanted to be new and did not know how. Shouts braided with silence. Some mocked her accent. Some called her the widow and spat. Some watched with eyes that had seen too much and could no longer move. She sat straight because it was the last thing she could control. She did not beg. Someone later wrote that her stillness made the crowd uneasy. It reads like the truth even if it cannot be proven line by line. The scaffold waited on the Place de la Révolution, a space where rituals had changed costume. Wood smelled of rain and iron. The machine looked almost humble from below. She climbed the steps slowly, hands bound, balance a negotiation. She trod on the foot of the executioner and spoke to him without ceremony. "Forgive me, sir, I did not do it on purpose. The sentence is plain. That is why it survived. No flourish, no last strike at history. Just old manners at the door of the void." He did his work. The bascule settled. The lunette closed at the throat. The city leaned closer without moving. The blade fell and the morning cracked. Noise rose because noise is what crowds have when words are not enough. Some accounts say scarves were marked with blood and waved like relics. Some say hair was cut and sold as talisman. Many historians view these as rumors dressed as testimony, recycled and embellished by time. What stands on firmer ground is this. The head was shown. A cheer rolled like weather. The cart came again to carry what remained down the other side of the platform. The square turned back into a square. The machine waited for the next name. That is the cruelty of procedure. It tidies the obscene in order to go on. Her death did not quiet the argument around her name. Revolutionary prints made her monstrous and foreign, a she-wolf gnawing at the body of France. Royalists pressed flowers into books and remembered the sound of a soft voice. Abroad, courts read dispatches with hands that shook, wondering how far the fever could travel. The Brunswick Manifesto had already sharpened fear, and now the severed certainty of monarchy lay heavy on every table where kings ate. Diplomats composed sentences like bandages. Nothing stopped the flow. France bled and sang at the same time. The Committee of Public Safety measured salvation in stern lines. The calendar changed. Time itself was corrected by decree. To understand why the blade fell, we must leave the scaffold and return to the math. War against Britain and its allies strained a treasury already ill. The American War had been glory without accounting. Tax reform died on the lips of men who owed their class more than their country. Grain failed and prices rose. Hoarding grew. Speculators became the devils of every story. The Queen did spend, sometimes unwisely, sometimes as expected by her role. In a well-ordered kingdom, such spending is decoration. In a ruin, it becomes a crime. The libels found a tone and never let it go. They were the social media of their century, quick, vicious, and proud of it. Many claims were fiction. The damage was real. The trial was not built to discover the truth. It was built to display it. The tribunal dressed certainty in legal clothes. Defense was a courtesy, not a path. The most lurid charge served a purpose beyond the defendant. It allowed the public to tell itself that the old order was corrupt, not only in law and expense, but in nature. If the Queen could be made a private monster, then the public could be clean in its violence. Scholars remind us to mark this as propaganda, not proof. The record of her one line in response stands against the tide. It is not enough to redeem her. It is enough to complicate the story, which is the only honest goal history can keep. There is also the matter of foreignness. She was Austrian by birth, rooted in the Habsburg web that stretched across Europe. In quiet years that made her a bridge. In years of fire it made her a suspect. Every letter breathed treason if you tilted the page. Every cousin was an enemy in waiting. The revolution feared encirclement and wrote laws to match the fear. The law of suspects widened the net. The queen did not escape the net, because nets do not open for one fish. She fell into the middle of it and sank. After the blade, the city handled the body as it handled others. There is no special tomb for a symbol in a season that is trying to kill symbols. A grave in the Madeleine took what was left. Lime did what lime does. The ground closed and was not marked. The point was to end stories, not to plant them. Yet stories do what seeds do even in poor soil. The Restoration returned in 1815 with music and old names. The new king ordered the dead to be found. Men with spades and care opened earth and read bones for clues. Height, sex, traces of hair, scars no record had mentioned. They matched enough to satisfy grief. In 1816, the remains were carried to St. Denis and laid among stone rulers with stone faces. Tourists whisper there because the building tells them to. Her image did not rest. Painters and printers continued to trade on her face. Some hardened her into a warning, some softened her into a saint. The truth sits between those extremes, uneasy and human. She was a woman trained for a court that hid conflict in manners. She met a century that pulled manners apart to see what bled. She had courage at the end. She had blind spots at the beginning. She made enemies without meaning to and made mistakes without knowing their price. She also became the scapegoat a nation requested. That combination is common in the fall of empires. It is not satisfying. It is accurate. The Petit Trianon deserves a brief return. It was a retreat, a theater of pastoral ease. Milk and porcelain. Grass cut to a curve demanded by a painter. Critics wrote it as proof that she played at simplicity while the poor starved. Admirers called it a necessary refuge in a job that ate the soul. Both could be true. Symbols do not permit nuance, but people require it to breathe. When the gates fell, the refuge became Exhibit A, in a case already decided. The shepherdess costume could not survive the smell of the crowd's hunger. Letters mark another layer. She wrote to her family with the careful code of a woman who knows every word may be held against her. Some of those letters were seized. Some were edited by enemies. Some were embellished by friends. We hold them now at a distance, candles behind glass, and pretend we can hear her real voice through the hum of politics. What we can hear with confidence are the rhythms of education, faith, and habit. She was raised to believe God had placed her on a path, and that dignity was a duty. She died when the path disappeared and dignity was the only thing left to carry. Consider also the women of Paris. They marched for bread and for justice, and they dragged the royal gaze to the market floor. Their anger was not born in pamphlets alone. It came from kitchens with no flour and from years of being told to wait. They looked at the queen and saw a mirror turned away. Propaganda poured gasoline on that heat, but the fire had its own wood. When she passed in the cart, some women cursed her. Others watched and measured their own sorrow in the set of her shoulders. The history of that morning lives in both throats. What do we do with the legend of her hair turned white in a single night? It is a haunting image. It appears in many tales of the condemned. Medicine offers a theory about sudden bleaching when pigmented hair is lost quickly and white hair remains. Historians warn that this is speculative and rarely documented with certainty. The line belongs to theater more than to the archive. Yet the image persists because it feels like the truth of grief and fear condensed to color. The honest path is to name it as legend and then to say what we know. Her appearance changed in prison. Stress altered her face. Time moved faster in those rooms than in the world outside. Her last words remain a point of quiet. The apology to the executioner appears in memoirs and notes of the day. It fits her training, and it fits the mood of a woman who could still offer a formal phrase when nothing else was hers to give. Some versions add flourishes. Some strip it down to a whisper. The core is stable. That is why it stands like a pin holding a ripped gown. A small sentence made of manners outlived mountains of speeches because it was the size of a human breath and no larger. After she was gone, the revolution did not pause. The machine kept turning. The year grew harder. The blade fell oftener. Names became numbers in lists. In that saturation, her particular story might have blurred. It did not blur because monarchies do not dissolve quietly. They echo. Europe listened and clenched. France changed calendars to command time, yet could not command memory. The Restoration tried to stitch a noble past back into a usable present. It succeeded in ceremony and failed in permanence. The tomb at Saint Denis holds bones and the idea of stability. Both are beautiful and brittle. In the end, we come back to a cell and a cart and a set of steps. We come back because these are the scenes the mind can stage. A queen is easier to understand in a moment than in a century. But if you walk the long road of causes, you find a state that had eaten itself and a public that could no longer swallow lies offered with lace. You find a woman who bore blame that was not entirely hers, and a crown that had trained itself to ignore warning bells. You find a courtier's genius wasted on a world that had grown practical and angry. You find a mother who touched the last human fact available to her. Forgive me. The board was kicked. The pieces fell. The drum rolled on. She is not a saint in this telling, and not a monster either. She is a final chapter in a book that had been overlong and underread. Her life teaches the limits of ceremony. Her death teaches the appetite of crowds. Her memory teaches the danger of stories that feel true because they rhyme with our fears. Between the printed lies and the sworn truths lies the cold floor of the hall, where she waited for the key to turn. If you listen, you can almost hear the drip in the corner and the faint noise of a city learning to speak a new language made of laws and smoke. If this history held you, stay with us. There are more nights where drums drown prayer. There are more trials where verdicts arrive on the first page. There are more rooms where power forgets the world beyond its mirrors. Subscribe, and we will keep the torches lit against the dark. Would you have forgiven her? Or does the symbol still drown out the person?